my dear students, I am Professor Manasi from JK Shah classes and I am here to revise your first chapter of your other laws, your very favorite Indian Contract Act 1872. Now what is the weightage of this chapter? Approximately 12 to 14 marks. Now if you see, now since you have 30 marks MCQs in your law paper, they ask you 12 marks descriptive questions and maybe 2-3 marks they can ask you MCQs. So approximately 12 to 14 marks is the weightage. Let's start up with the first unit, that is your indemnity and guarantee. Now I have seen a lot of students getting confused in indemnity and guarantee because in both the places you give assurance. So what is the difference between both? That we shall understand. Let's start up with the first part. So Indian Contract Act 1872, indemnity, in simple words, indemnity is nothing but protection against losses. That is to make good the loss. Now what exactly is making good the loss? I will take one example and you will be very clear here. Example, A is new in the market, people don't trust him. He desperately wants to enter into a contract with B because B is a very reputed person in the market and A feels that if I regularly contract with B, no, yes, my business will flourish. So A approaches B, ki sir, let's do business, let's do some or the other business. B tells A, but you are new, I don't trust you, what if I have losses because of you, where will I go? A tells him, don't worry sir. A tells B, sir, if you do business with me, if you incur any losses, I will compensate you with those losses. So A is protecting B. That means I can say A is the indemnifier and B is the indemnified. Indemnified is also known as indemnity holder, right? So A is protecting B that I will give you losses. I could also say A is promising B that I will give you losses. So A is the promiser, B is the promisee. So if there are any losses incurred due to conduct of promiser himself, that means because of A, if there is any loss, A will give this loss to B. So it is indemnity. So conduct of promiser himself. Let me change this. Suppose what if I tell you A and B both are well established in the market. It is A's friend C who wants to desperately contract with B but B doesn't trust him. So C tells A, yeah, A, please do some work for me. Please give assurance for me, because you are a reputed name in the business and if you are giving assurance for me, people will trust me. So A tells B, sir, if you do business with C and if you incur any losses, I will compensate you with the losses. Again, A is protecting B. A is the indemnifier and B is the indemnified or indemnity holder. But previously, A was protecting B for any losses incurred due to conduct of his own self. Now he is protecting B for any losses incurred due to conduct of any other person. So here it is nothing but indemnity contract. So I will just tell you what is section 124 indemnity contract. It is a contract where one person promises to save the other against future losses either incurred due to conduct of promiser himself or conduct of any other person. It is an indemnity contract. There are two parties, indemnifier and indemnified, who is also known as indemnity holder. And A will give these losses to B only if he suffers those losses. That means it may or may not happen. It's a contingent contract. Not only this, bacha, it's a contract. That means all the essential elements of a valid contract should be satisfied. If A tells to B, you go and beat up C, whatever happens, don't worry, I am here to pay you that. So in that case, this is a void contract Because all the essential elements of a valid contract should be satisfied. There should be lawful object, there should be lawful consideration, and so on. So that is your section 124 indemnity contract. So ma'am, which losses are you talking about? I will continue with the same example. See, now B feels, oh, A is giving me assurance for losses. I can enter into a contract with C. So B contracts with C. But your doing business can be anything. Doing business can be selling goods, buying goods, giving loan, taking loan. It can be anything. So B sells goods to C on credit and C is promising to pay 1 lakh. C defaults. What will B do? Recover it from A. Answer is a big no. But this is not guarantee. So there is a thin line difference between indemnity and guarantee. In indemnity, you give assurance only for losses or expenses. Whereas in guarantee, you give assurance for the whole amount. If he does not pay, I will pay. If A would have said that, then it would have become definitely guarantee contract. Then B could recover full amount from A. But did A say that? No. What did A say? If you incur any losses or expenses because of C, I will give you those losses or expenses. Now, what kind of losses or expenses A is actually talking about? For example, if C defaults, B can sue C. And if B sues C, B will have to incur cost of litigation. That means he will have to incur legal expenses. These expenses B is incurring because of this C. So these expenses B can recover it from A. Or let's say if C defaults, B is appointing some recovery agents, legal recovery agents. You know, banks also have recovery agents. So they don't work for free. So B had to appoint recovery agents to recover money from C. So these expenses which he has incurred, that is, B is giving something to those recovery agents. So whatever expenses he is incurring or whatever damages B is incurring, that he can recover from A. Or let's say there is a compromise and B had to pay some amount in compromise, or B had to let go something in compromise, then that amount he can recover it from A. So these three expenses is what B can recover from A. So these are the rights of indemnified. Indemnified can recover these three expenses. But bacha, this is not an exhaustive list. As in, apart from these 3 points, if you have any other loss or expense which you think it's genuine, that can be recovered from A. This is your section 125. So section 124 tells you what is an indemnity contract, and 125 tells you what all expenses indemnified can recover from the indemnifier. Right? Now one last thing in indemnity which I want you to know, bacha. If C defaults, B can sue C. A can't directly sue C, no? Because here A is a stranger to the contract, and you have studied stranger to the contract cannot sue. So indemnifier, that is A, cannot sue third party, that is C, on his own because he is a stranger to the contract. But what if I tell you B assigned his rights to A? Assigned means transferred. Whatever rights B had, he transferred them to A. Now A can sue C. It was an exception to stranger to contract cannot sue. You remember, right? So I am making that legal statement. Indemnifier, that is A, cannot sue third party, that is C, on his own unless there is an assignment in his favor. Unless there is an assignment in his favor. So that is your indemnity contract. Moving on to your next part of this unit, that is guarantee contract. Now in guarantee contract, I am going to put up one big example. Yes. What is this example? Example. B was in need of money. He approached A and he wanted loan. A told B, I don't trust you, get me a guarantor. So B approaches C. Hence, A agrees to give him loan of 10 lakhs. And B promises to repay this along with 10% interest. Now, C is giving guarantee. But practical life, who gives guarantee for you? Your parents, your relatives, your close friends, basically people who trust you, right? But B's parents are already in debt. See, if you are giving guarantee for someone else, you yourself should be financially strong. You can't have 5 loans on your head and then you give guarantee for someone else. It doesn't make sense. So B's parents are already in debt. His friends and his relatives don't trust him at all. Poor fellow. So he approaches C, who is a professional guarantor. So B is going to give him commission 10,000 and C is giving guarantee. Bacha, please tell me, C is giving guarantee to B or for B? For B. So I will write here guarantee for Mr. B. Now those who feel ki ma'am just for 10,000 commission he is giving guarantee. Bacha, it's like your insurance. In that insurance contract, bacha, if I pay premium and if I take 10 lakh policy, I will get 10 lakhs only if the fire occurs. If the fire doesn't occur, then full 10,000 premium whatever I have paid is profit for the insurance company. Same thing here also. So C will pay this 10 lakhs plus interest only if B defaults. If B pays full money, then full 10,000 is profit for him, the commission. Let's say if B defaults, then C will have to pay full amount. But later on C can recover it from B. That means sooner or later C is going to get his money back. But he is getting this commission because of the risk which he is taking for Mr. B. So commission contracts are perfectly valid. C is giving guarantee to A for B, right? Okay. So if you notice, bacha, there are 3 parties. Yes, surety, C is known as a surety, guarantor. Guarantor is in a layman language, in legal language he is known as a surety. A is the one giving loan, he is known as a creditor. And B is known as a principal debtor. So surety is a person who gives guarantee. Creditor is a person to whom the guarantee is given. And principal debtor is a person for whom the guarantee is given. Right? Now, if you notice, there are 3 parties. How many contracts can you see? 3. One is between AB, other is between B and C, and the third one is between A and C. See, loan contract. The actual contract of guarantee is not between A and B or B and C. Actual contract of guarantee is between A and C. Between A and B, it's just loan contract. Between B and C, it's just commission contract. But actual contract of guarantee is between A and C. So if you have understood this, please focus on contract between A and C and please tell me what is C giving A? Guarantee. So this is consideration for A. Tell me what is A giving C? Nothing? Question mark? So should I say no consideration, no contract? No ma'am, exception? No. Guarantee was not an exception in no consideration, no contract. Bacha, government knew that some or the other will prove this as void. So therefore, they have made one more section here, section 127, which says there is no actual consideration required. Anything done by the creditor for the benefit of principal debtor is a valid consideration for surety to give the guarantee. I'll repeat. Bacha, A is giving loan to B. So anything done by the creditor for the benefit of principal debtor is treated as valid consideration to surety for giving guarantee. So this will be assumed to be consideration. No actual consideration is required. Right? And students have the misconception that in practical life only loans are given. Only for loans you give guarantee. Not necessary. You can give guarantee for performance also. For example, yes, if I talk about performance, here A is giving 80 lakhs to B and B is going to construct a house. But A is scared that in this particular case, B might not construct the house, so guarantor comes into the picture. So B tells A, if B does not construct, I will construct the house. Here C tells A, if B does not pay, I will pay. So if you have understood this, bacha, C is promising A that if B does not pay or perform, I will pay or perform. So what is guarantee contract? Section 126 tells you what is a guarantee contract. It is a contract where one person, that is C, promises to other, that is A, to perform the contract, that is this, or discharge the liability, that is this, if the third party B does not perform or pay. Which are here contract between A and C, B is a third party only. So C tells A, if B does not perform, I will perform. C tells A, if B does not pay, I will pay. So this is a contract of guarantee. Yes. So this was your section 126 and section 127. And a very crucial point which I want to ask you here. But what if I tell you B defaults? Therefore, poor C had to pay everything. What all amounts will C paid? C will pay first one loan 10 lakhs. Secondly, he will pay interest 10% 1 lakh plus damages also he'll have to pay because B delayed it and whatever. So let's say he paid damages of 20,000. So total poor fellow C paid 11 lakh 20,000. Can he recover 11 lakh 20,000 from B later on? So yes, you will say. So he is trying to recover full 11 lakh 20,000 from B. But B says, listen, your guarantee was only for principal and interest. Who told you to pay 20,000? I will not give you. But C should get. So section 145 comes to your rescue. Listen to me. B tells C initially when B went to C asking for guarantee, sir, give guarantee for me. So C says, what about my loss? Because of you, if I suffer any losses, where will I go? So B tells C, sir, please give guarantee for me. If you incur any losses, don't worry, I will compensate you with those losses. So bacha, if you understand, B is indemnifying C so that C gives guarantee for B. So there is an implied contract of indemnity. Implied, it's understood. Implied contract of indemnity between the principal debtor and the surety, where PD protects the surety so that surety gives guarantee for PD. That is your section 145. Clear? Yes. Then the next crucial parts. Yes, other things coextensive and all that is okay. If you see in the textbook, you have the same textbook, but just see. Indemnity we saw. It is a contract where one person promises to save the other from losses, either incurred due to conduct of promisor himself or any other person. So, bacha, practical life example for indemnity was insurance contract. In insurance contract also, bacha, same thing happens. Insurance company tells you if you incur any losses, we'll give you that. So, two losses are covered, conduct of promisor himself or any other person. So, marine insurance, fire insurance are all indemnity. But bacha, life insurance is not indemnity, because life insurance you get money either on death or maturity, which is certain. Either death will happen or maturity will happen. So, life insurance do not come in this category. Then it's like contract, it's a contingent contract, it should fulfill essential elements. You cannot sue third person unless there is an assignment. Next page you will find section 125. You can claim damages, you can claim cost of litigation, compromise amount and so on. Then guarantee. It is a contract to perform the promise or discharge the liability of a third person, that is B, in case of his default. Person who gives guarantee is the surety and all that. So there are three contracts, and guarantee can be oral or written also. Anything is okay. But if you feel, but ma'am, in practical life they are in writing. Yes, because we need some proof. But act is not telling you that it should be in writing. If you feel oral is okay, you trust that person, then okay. Then no actual consideration is required. That will be deemed to be consideration. Then coming to a very, very crucial part, that is discharge of surety. Types of guarantee and all is very, very simple, bacha. But let's talk about discharge of surety. Hey bacha, when I use the term surety is discharged, means surety is liable or not liable? Not liable, obviously. There are 4 parts here. Let me first write the sections. Section 133, 134, 135 and 139. Section 133 tells you a very simple thing. If you do any variation in terms of contract without the consent of the surety is discharged. But your same example, if they mutually decide A and B that interest will not be henceforth 10%, it will be 12%. Surety is like, ask me, I am also there. Did you forget me? So if you do any changes without C's consent, the surety is discharged. Variation without the consent of the surety will discharge the surety. Section 134 says, if principal debtor is discharged, surety is automatically discharged. For example, this fellow A, he waived off the entire loan. He told B, don't pay anything, it's okay. I waived off the loan. So tell me, will B pay? No. Will C pay like an idiot? No, na. So if you discharge principal debtor, surety is also automatically discharged. So PD is discharged, surety is discharged. Section 135. If any extra time is given by the creditor to the principal debtor for performance without the consent of the parties or without the consent of the surety, again will discharge the surety. Now, section 135, if I take the example, you know the repayment period was 2 years. Without asking C, A gave him 1 more year to repay. C is like, without asking me, how can you extend my guarantee? The interest will also increase. Ask me at least. If you give extra time without his consent, he is discharged. Now students ask me, ma'am, section 133 and 135 are same. Okay. Section 135 specifically talks about extra time given. Section 133 is any other change. Just the number has changed, but the conclusion still remains the same. So section 133, variation, and 135 is extra time. Section 139 says, if creditor does not do his duty, the surety is discharged. Now what is this? Example, you know, in practical life even honesty is guaranteed. So there was one Ramesh and there was one Suresh, and Ramesh told Suresh that, look, I am in need of a cashier. You have good person, I can appoint him. So Suresh says, there is one Ajit. He's a good person. He's a very honest person. I can guarantee you. Ramesh says, but I don't know him. Suresh says, don't worry, I'm guaranteeing you his honesty. He's so honest, by chance if anything happens and if he runs away or something, I'll give you full money. So Suresh is giving guarantee for Ajit to Ramesh. That means Suresh is the surety, Ramesh is the creditor, Ajit is the principal debtor. Right. Now Suresh, in that particular case, puts a condition to Ramesh that I am giving you guarantee of his honesty, but one condition. Every week, Ramesh, you need to check the cash book and cash balance so that the chances of fraud will reduce. Ramesh says, okay, done. Every week he used to check. 1 week he fails to check. And Ajit did not leave this chance. He fled with the money. So the moment Ajit ran, Ramesh ran to Suresh that give me money. Suresh says, why should I pay you? You did not do your work. So in that particular case, if creditor does not do his own job, surety is discharged. But of course, surety should come to know that he did not do the job. So in all 4 cases, surety is discharged. Variation, PD is discharged, surety is discharged, extra time given without his consent, and creditor does not do his duty, surety is discharged. The in between sections which were missing, here they are talking about non-discharge of surety. Non-discharge of surety, section 136, 137 and 138. Okay. Section 136. Students get confused here. Section 136 says, if you give any extra time if any extra time is given by the creditor to the principal debtor because of a contract with a third party, the surety is not discharged. Surety is not discharged. Now, why? See, students mix up section 135 and section 136. But remember, section 135 says, internally if you decide and if you give extra time without surety's consent, surety is discharged. 136 says, you contract with an outsider and if you give extra time, surety is not discharged. In the class, I had given you example regarding the same. So, simple, don't chew your brains. Extra time given internally after deciding, surety is discharged. Extra time given because of a contract with a third party, surety is not discharged. Section 137, yes, says mere forbearance on the part of creditor to sue principal debtor will not discharge the surety. Will not discharge the surety. Now, I know this fact that if this fellow B does not repay the loan, A will recover money from C. But C has a right to tell A that you come to me as a last resort where nothing else works out. Don't come to me directly. As in, if B does not pay, try to sell his assets, try to sue him. Still, if you are unable to get anything, then you come to me as a last resort where nothing else works out. Don't come to me just because you are too lazy to sue him or just because you are too lazy to sell his assets. So, if B defaults, A sued B after 1 month. It's okay. 1 month is okay. So, A sued B but after a delay of 1 month. Still, A could not get anything from B. Therefore, A went to C. C tells A, since you delayed the suing, I am discharged. A is like, why are you getting so excited? How does it matter to you? Mere delay on the part of the creditor to sue principal debtor is not gonna discharge you. So you shut up and you better pay me. So see, that's what I said. Mere forbearance. Forbearance means delay. Mere means just. Just delay on the part of the creditor to sue principal debtor will not discharge the surety. Section 138 tells you a very simple thing. Co-sureties, if one co-surety is discharged, others are not discharged. So they have jointly given guarantee to X of 9 lakhs. But X has discharged A. That does not mean B and C are discharged. They are still liable. Not only this, if you are discharging A, he is discharged here, but A is still liable to pay B and C internally. So, discharge of one co-surety will not discharge other co-sureties. So, extra time given by the creditor to PD with the contract with the third party, surety is not discharged. Mere delay to sue principal debtor will not discharge the surety. And lastly, one co-surety is discharged, other co-sureties are not discharged. Then, the crucial parts. Bacha, in exam, honestly, if examiner does not have time to read your whole answer, you need to attract the examiner by writing the keywords, the key terms, the case laws, the Latin terms, etc., etc. So wherever there is case law, it will be great if you quote the case law. They are not expecting you to write the whole story of the case law. You can just give the gist, or maybe you can just write the judgment, but write the name of the case law. Then put legal terms. Now see, instead of writing mere delay, write or just delay, write mere forbearance. So you use these legal terms, the heavy terms. It will attract your examiner. Okay. Rest, otherwise you can write the answer in your own words also. But put Latin terms wherever possible, especially interpretation. When we do that, I'll talk about it. Then put your legal terms wherever possible and put case laws wherever possible. Okay. Now, the other sections 140 and 141 tells you what are the rights of surety. Which are this surety is having rights against two people. Surety is having rights against the principal debtor as well as against the creditor. Now I'm just gonna write the same example here so that I don't have to scroll it up again. The same loan example, 10 lakhs, and B is going to repay it along with 10% interest, and bacha C is the surety. C is giving guarantee to A, right? Now in this particular case, bacha, what are C's rights against B? First one, even if I don't tell you, you should be remembering this. Bacha, surety has a right to get indemnified. I told you section 145. So surety has a right to get indemnified by the principal debt. So if this surety incurs any expenses because of PD, B will have to compensate him. Second one, he has a right of subrogation. Subrogation means stepping into the shoes of creditor. Now listen, first you tell me, first A will recover money from whom? B. So A will have a right to recover money from B. B does not pay, A can sell his assets. B does not pay, A can sue. So A is having all these rights. Now A tried everything but he could not get anything from B. Therefore A recovered everything from C. So C paid everything. Later on, my question to you, C paid everything to A now. Can C recover his money from B? Yes. So he can recover. Can he sell B's assets if any? Yes. Can he sue B? Yes. That means if you notice, whatever were the rights available to A, the same rights are now available to C. So C is getting all the rights of the creditor. So C is stepping into the shoes of creditor, that is A. Such right is known as right of subrogation. Now see, in exam don't write the term that surety gets the rights of the creditor. Use the term subrogation, use the term surety steps into the shoes of creditor, and so on. Then against creditor, what can he do? He can ask for principal debtors securities if any. Now same example, A is very scared. So A tells B, I don't trust you that you will repay. So you better get me a surety. So B got C as a surety. Also A tells B, what if your surety does not pay, where will I go? So you give me some asset also as security. Mortgage, pledge and all. Yeah. So B is also giving some asset as security. So A is having double protection. He is having surety also and he is getting the security also. But it is mutually decided between A, B, C that if B does not pay money, A will not sell the assets first. A will recover money from C first. I know it's different, it's vice versa, but it is mutually agreed that if B does not pay, A will not sell his assets, A will first recover money from C. And B defaults. Therefore, C had to pay everything to A. Now in that particular case, bacha, C can tell A, you got your money, I paid you. Now please give me those assets which you have as security, because now I want to sell them and recover my money. So C has a right to ask for principal debtors securities from Mr. A, that is creditor, if any. But you know, if A says, I lost those securities, I gave them to someone else, then C is discharged to that extent, whatever amount he has lost. So here he can ask for principal debtors securities, if any. So these are the rights against the principal debtor and rights against the creditor. Right. Now, there are some situations, bacha, where your guarantee becomes invalid. Invalid guarantee. First one, if it is obtained by concealment, that means you lied to someone and you obtained it. That is fraud. See, you know, they wanted C to give guarantee, so they lied to C that B's financial position is very good, or they concealed some very important fact. It is invalid. So now guarantee given by C is invalid. Or the guarantee is obtained by misrepresentation. Unintentionally you lied, but the point is you lied. So here it is invalid. Third, you required 3 guarantors and only one person gives guarantee. It is invalid until others join. So if B and C join, it's okay, but till B and C join, yes, this guarantee will be invalid. So that is your invalid guarantee. And the small topic which you have is contribution of co-sureties. You know, just like you have joint promisors, you also have joint guarantors or joint sureties. A, B, C are jointly giving loan of 9 lakhs, or A, B, C are jointly giving guarantee of 9 lakhs to Mr. X. If nothing is given, can I say they will share this in equal ratio? Or whatever agreed ratio they put, then in that ratio. So they have fixed the ratio as 1:2:3. So in that ratio. Or let's say, third point says, bacha, they fixed the ratio as 1:2:3. But now they change it to 4:5:1. Okay. Okay. Now they changed it to 3:2:1. Okay. Okay. That means, bacha, internally whatever you do, it will not affect the rights of X. He can still claim total 9 lakhs. So internal arrangement of funds will not affect the rights of the creditor. He can still claim full 9 lakhs. And lastly, this we have already discussed, if one co-surety is discharged, other co-sureties are definitely not discharged. So contribution of co-sureties, they can ask you 4 marks question, nothing is given equal or whatever agreed ratio. Internally, if you keep changing, it will not matter. So it will not affect the rights of the creditor. And if one co-surety is discharged, other co-sureties are not discharged. Now, indemnity and guarantee, I explained you both, bacha. Tell me the distinction between. In exam, you can write the distinction between in T form, but you should write the basis, the head points. First, you will write meaning of indemnity and meaning of guarantee, right? Then indemnity is only for losses, whereas guarantee is for the whole amount. Then indemnity, tell me, in indemnity, there are 2 parties. Here there are 3 parties. Indemnity contract is 1. In guarantee, there are 3 contracts, but main contract of guarantee is also 1. That is between surety and the creditor. But in indemnity, indemnifier cannot sue third party, no? Unless there is an assignment in his favor. But in guarantee, the surety can directly sue PD. No assignment required. In indemnity, indemnifier's liability is primary because it is A who is going to bear the expenses. But in case of guarantee, surety's liability is secondary, na? First, if PD does not pay, then the surety will be paying. So it is secondary. And one more thing, bacha, in indemnity, both the parties should be competent. Whereas in guarantee, principal debtor can be a minor, but surety and the creditor should be competent person. Only principal debtor can be a minor. If you want to know why, simple example, bacha, you give education loans na to minors, it's all valid because that's an exception. So this was your indemnity and guarantee. If you see your textbooks, discharge of surety, we saw 4 situations, 133 changes, 134, 135 and 139. Then non-discharged, 136 third party, 137 mere forbearance, that is delay, 138 one co-surety is discharged, others are not discharged. Then we saw rights against PD against creditor, right of subrogation, he steps into the shoes of creditor. Then principal debtor, again indemnity. Rights against the creditor, he can ask for the creditor's securities, as in he can ask for securities which belongs to the principal debtor. And see, if the creditor loses or parts with the security without the consent of the surety, surety is discharged to the extent of value of the security. We saw 3 invalid guarantees, misrepresentation, fraud. You require multiple guarantors, only one has come, it's invalid. Contribution, we saw 4 points, equal, nothing given, or agreed ratio. Yeah, if one is discharged, others are not discharged. An internal arrangement will not affect the rights of the creditor. And we saw the distinction between as well. Fine. So this was your unit 1 indemnity and guarantee.